Well, hello. Okay, so today I'm reviewing The Witch's Daughter by Paula Brackston because I finished it. Woo! So I started this on the 3rd of July and I finished it yesterday, the 5th of July. And yeah, so let's get started. So this is a story about a woman called Elizabeth Hawksmith. It sort of goes, they kind of describe it as time travel. It's not time travel, or at least that's what this little thing says. A riveting tale of sorcery and time travel. Not time travel in the sense of machines and getting in and traveling to a different time. It's more like the reader travels to different times. Basically, we start out with this journal written by Elizabeth Hawksmith, and it's set in present day, and she sort of writes about just what she's doing and, you know, that kind of stuff. And she's sort of this isolated older lady. She introduces herself as like 384 years old, but that she looks about 40 to 50 years old. So she's an older woman. She's just moved to this new place in what I'm assuming is England. They never exactly say. And she, how do I describe this? She's basically just rebuilding another life. She's in another new place. She's clearly been in tons of different places before, and now she's starting over again because she's trying to escape from this guy called Gideon Masters. Oh, really important, there is a little prologue, and it's back in 1628 when she's known as Bess, and she is running from from the witch finders of Wessex, and she's running from them. And then she kind of, like, we know that there's someone called Gideon Masters who is going to be looking for her, and she's a witch. That's basically what we know. Then we find out about this new life that she's starting, and in this first section of the book she meets a girl called Tegan, who I believe is supposed to be about 16 years old. And she doesn't want to get connected to her because she knows that she'll probably get caught eventually and have to leave suddenly, and so she doesn't want to make any connections to anyone. She doesn't want to get emotionally attached to anybody, especially not Tegan, because Tegan reminds her of her younger sister. So she feels sort of drawn towards Tegan, and Tegan is drawn towards her, and is desperate to sort of start this connection with her. And Elizabeth is like, I don't know about this, because, you know, I don't know. They do eventually sort of create this bond, and it's a little bit awkward at first, and Tegan guesses that Elizabeth is a witch, and so Elizabeth finally ends up telling her a little bit of her story. And that's where we first go into her past life. So it's 1628, I believe we start in 1627, and we get introduced to Bess, and we get introduced to Bess' mom, her dad, her brother, her sister, and a couple of other people within her little town, village, whatever. And we also are introduced to Gideon Masters, who at first Elizabeth isn't sure what he is and what he does. So she's a little bit, she knows that there's something about him that makes her a little bit nervous, but she's not sure what it is. So, and then you go back to present day, and some more drama with Tegan and Elizabeth, and then eventually she tells another part of her story where it's set in 1888, the time of Jack the Ripper, and I was so pleased to see that they were including that in there. I kind of have this thing for the Jack the Ripper stories and mysteries, and I have a whole bunch of like encyclopedias downstairs on my bookshelf for Jack the Ripper and stuff like that. So I really like that, and I enjoyed that they put it in there. I mean, it wasn't a main part of the story, it was just that was the time that she was in. So it tells another part of her story, then goes back to present day again, and then goes back again to 1917, I think it is, yeah, 1917, during the time of the trenches and the war and soldiers and all that kind of stuff, and tells another section of her history, and then goes back to present day, and that's where it ends. So you get these three really cool historical I guess, sections of her life. It kind of took me a while to get into the book because the beginning I was just kind of like, oh, I thought it was going to go straight into her past life, and I was really looking forward to that. But it started with present day, and that sort of was like, eh. So it took me probably a good couple of pages. It probably actually took me until she started telling her story for me to actually get into the story and into the book enough to keep on reading. I sort of had to force myself through the first part. Not because the writing was bad or it was boring, it just, I was a little disappointed that it didn't start immediately with the story. So the characters in this book, I can put this book down. I don't think I have to hold the book the whole time. The characters in the story that are most important at that and that make appearances throughout the whole thing are Elizabeth Ann Hawksmith, and that is the main character. She's also known as Bess in 1628, Eliza in 1888, and Elise, I think it's Elise in 1917. So she has these kind of three different personas, I guess. Then we have Tegan, who I don't remember if we know her last name. She's a 16-year-old girl. She's new to the village as well that Elizabeth has just moved into, and her mom is constantly working, and so Tegan has a lot of time to herself, and that's why she's drawn towards Elizabeth, I guess, as a sort of mother figure, since her mom is always gone and working. She is very kind of, the only way I know how to describe her personality is like bouncy and just kind of a little bit insecure, but you know, the type of personality that would rather be friends with an older, like 50-year-old lady than someone your own age. So whatever personality that is, you know, that's what she is. And then you have Gideon Masters, who is a warlock, and he's kind of evil and spooky and stuff, but or not Elizabeth, Bess finds herself really drawn towards him back before she becomes a witch, and it just kind of doesn't really know why, but she's like, you kind of freak me out, but I kind of like your face. So, you know, the best, the parts of the book where I feel like I really got to know Elizabeth's character more are definitely when she tells her past stories and tells about her sort of past lives. Those definitely revealed a lot more about her personality than her present day self does. Her present day self is kind of, is very secluded and doesn't really talk to very many people, and she kind of shuts herself down and shuts people out, and so she's a little bit I didn't really like her, and I think you're supposed to dislike her in present day because she's trying so desperately to not get emotionally attached to anyone, because she knows that it's, you know, Gideon Masters is going to come after her at some point, and he is going to find her. So I think you're supposed to, in a way, dislike her, and then you immediately start to like her once you meet her past self, and she's much more interesting in those as well. Tegan, I feel like you get to know her, but not very much. Not as much as we get to know Elizabeth, which is fine because Elizabeth is the main character in the book. I feel like we get to know a little bit more about Gideon than we do about Tegan. Okay, so the writing style, I really enjoyed the writing style. It was very British. It was very elegant and not posh, but very grammatically correct and poetic in some places, but not too poetic, and it kind of really reflected Elizabeth's character and the way that she is. She was just very stoic and very, you know, I will say what I need to say, and I will say it with as few words as I possibly can, and so I really liked the parts where she wrote herself. So in the present day parts, we're reading sections of her journal, and then in the past parts, we're reading from third person, so it's she said rather than I said. The writing is very appropriate to whatever time they're in the book. So we have, like in 1888, not necessarily Bess, well, at that point she's Eliza, not necessarily Eliza herself, but everyone else's dialogue is very appropriate to that time, and it doesn't seem out of place. And the same for when she's in 1917, everything fits with that, and the grammar that they use and the way that other characters speak, just like some of the minor characters, fits really well with the time that they're in. It's very easy to distinguish between Tegan and Elizabeth. There is some parts in the book where Tegan writes in the journal, and so her parts are very, very, they immediately, the second that you start reading, within like 2 words, you know that it's Tegan talking and not Elizabeth. So I thought that was done very well. The author adapted her way of writing to each character in each time period very accordingly, and I really liked that. I started out not liking this book so much, and then I really got into it and really liked it, and it's sort of the first book that I've ever read that has been a witch, like a Wicca, whatever, one of those witches. The only thing that I didn't particularly like, even when I got really into the book, were sections where she and Tegan would be like standing around a campfire and chanting and, "Oh goddess, let me welcome blah blah blah." That kind of stuff, just, I couldn't get into it. They would like chant poetry, and that to me was just like, okay, whatever, moving on. So that was really the only thing that I didn't like in this book, but I guess it's a witch story, you kind of have to have that. So for a first witch story, I did really enjoy it. It was really good. I liked the writing a lot. It flowed really nicely and smoothly. And yeah, so I would give this out of, let's see, shall I do 5 stars or 10 stars? I'll do 5 stars. No, I'm gonna do 6 stars because I'm awesome. So out of 6 stars, I'm going to give this a 5. I'll give this a 5. Do I want to give this a 5? 4.5. 4 3/4. I don't know. In between a 4 and a 5. Because I did really like it. I doubt that I would read this again. And for me, for a book to be really, really good, I have to be able to read it over and over again. So this one's going to be like a 4 or 5. So yeah, good. Liked it. Okay, so the next book on my list for this month is going to be The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. So I'm going to start reading that today, and it's relatively short. It does have really small writing, so it's not that short. But yeah, this is going to be the next book that I read. I will start reading this today, the 6th of July, and I will see you guys when it's done. Bye!